Hi there, and welcome to At a Distance, where we interview Tulsa's creative ambassadors. That's artists, food workers, small business people, curators, and other folks in the know. So the COVID-19 pandemic has affected all these people's work and lives. So we want to know, what they're doing to adapt to this kind of new reorganization of our society. I'm Matt Carney, and I manage Route, your doodle guide to Tulsa, and I'm here with Carolyn Sickles, who is the executive director of the Tulsa Artist Fellowship. Welcome, Carolyn. How are you doing?
We're doing well out here.
Yeah, up north. You're a little north of Tulsa.
Yeah, so we're about 20 minutes north of downtown. So close but far for Tulsa standards for sure.
Yes, yeah. We have been, my wife and I have been social distancing here inside of our house pretty thoroughly. We had some friends over actually last night for the first time. They came in through the side gate and sat on our back patio with us, and so we were able to kind of maintain distance, but also hang out and see each other, which was really nice.
I'm sure.
So I want to ask you, what is the state of the Artist Fellowship currently? How are your fellows doing? You bring in these people from all over the country to live and work in Tulsa. How are they doing? Is everybody doing okay? Like what's going on?
Well, I'd have to say, I think the state of the fellowship right now is, we're grateful. We feel displaced. I think everyone has exhausted the levels of adaptation around their professional practices. But I would have to say that we're, I think, doing quite well because our program has the honor to be able to operate at least through the adaptation. So around us, we're seeing within our field, but within other fields, tremendous impact. I think gratitude is just something that has kind of permeated amongst our community right now.
Are you able to kind of talk and communicate with your fellows on a regular basis? What does that kind of look like?
Yeah, one of the first things that we did when we decided that our studio buildings were going to definitively need to close, not just because of the protection of the fellows, but staff, the folks that are part of our housekeeping crew, the contract workers that interface within our buildings. When we figured that out, I think we were, as many community members were, in kind of a state of shock. So I think it took us probably about 2 weeks to just do some general check-ins, see how our community members are doing. And now I think we have fallen into a place where I think is really critical for creative community members, which is people are on a very broad spectrum of what productivity looks like. So we have made sure that the artists within the community know we are here. They can communicate with us as needed. We can Zoom, we can have a phone call, we can email. I think several people have become now like my favorite pen pals. People I used to see every day, and that those conversations you'd have in the hallways, when that's been lifted, you've learned that you need to interject that back into your life. So yeah, we're here, but we've really wanted to be a community that has alleviated the pressure for people to engage or feel creatively productive or overly social. Everyone's kind of on their own time, and that's okay. So
you mentioned that your fellows are adapting, finding new ways to work and communicate with you. I noticed that some of them have been doing digital studios during the pandemic, for instance. What's the reception to those been like? How's it been going? Have the artists been enjoying them?
I mean, I think so. There was a very small window at the beginning of when we closed for the first Friday Open Studios event in March. As our studio buildings are places for the public to engage periodically, they are first and foremost workspaces, and also there's living spaces connected. So keeping those spaces safe and clean, and that was our priority. So there was a small window where we were adapting to just the physical distancing, and we did engage with fellows who were still having access to their studios and some of these social studios videos that we've been releasing. And then obviously with the day-to-day escalation of the COVID-19 pandemic, we decided that closing those buildings was very important to us. So we had to rethink how people were going to be engaging publicly from workspaces. Some of our artists, like I mentioned, aren't necessarily like working on paintings or sculptures or writing at this moment. So we have been, I think, getting very creative in artist-led projects with those who do feel that they want that public engagement within their practice. So we're doing things like we have this really cool local access performance series that's kicking off this week, and it's focused on kind of noise artists here in Tulsa. We have people who are doing online readings, people who are doing workshops, making meditative soundscapes. We're really excited about kind of sharing our social media platforms with artists in a way that's about the work, not necessarily about the process behind the work. We're going to be doing some cool things that you'll see appearing in different media platforms in Tulsa that are really artwork driven. So it's kind of business as usual in the sense that we listen to our artists and hear what they would like to be doing with their time and community engagement. And I do find that that's like, way more interesting than any sort of programming we would be designing in a vacuum. I mean, that collaboration within the presenting side with artists is really critical for us. So,
is that Nathan Young who's been running the noise stuff?
Yes, Nathan's Tulsa Noise programming is absolutely amazing.
It's so much fun.
It has thrived and grown in the last 3 years, and we're really excited to see where it continues to go within this virtual space. Nathan had his festival that was scheduled, and he's postponed it to the fall. So, all of those kind of scheduling updates will, are available within our social media. But yes, I mean, it's been a really interesting exercise, I think, for artists to see, and myself as an artist, how you're adapting your practice, and hopefully getting to maybe think about something that you might want to continue after the challenges of the distance. I think I've seen so many artists really start looking towards their website domains as places that can be actual platforms for art, not just places for archiving art. Transitioning social media platforms into more of exhibition and performance spaces. I think for me, taking off my artist hat, I think being in those spaces has been much more interesting. It's not just like a catalog of what people are doing in their lives, but it's actually like a place to feel like you're getting rich content and you're building community in a way that I think is much more authentic than just seeing kind of through the lens of being kind of a spectator. You get to actually like step hopefully into the process. So.
And be participatory. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, kind of moving from talking about the fellows to talking about your staff. There's people who work with you to support this program to keep it running. How have you and your staff handled the adjustment to working remotely, and what do you do to keep everybody on the same page when you don't have a shared office to meet in regularly and check in and talk to people?
Well, thankfully, we're not alone in that. So you can spend probably about 5 minutes on the internet these days and learn how to borrow what people have adopted as their new way of meeting. I think we had a really good time with kind of reframing that structure for us as like a check-in process. We're a small team. There's only 6 of us currently that are full-time. So we're in constant daily conversation. I mean, we are talking all day. So sometimes when we have a staff meeting, it's funny because you've probably talked to these people 12 times that day. So we look at it as an opportunity to kind of center ourselves, talk about things in the field. It's more of a professional development opportunity. We've been doing these show and tells where people pull things from their everyday life and bring them in and tell stories, and they're thematic. They've been really funny. We've done everything from items in your refrigerator to favorite books, pairs of shoes. It's been like a nice way to talk about where we are. And then we've also been doing these things called field experiences where we take turns bringing into our staff either like a podcast or a video or an article or sometimes an activity, and we'll do them together. And it's you know, sometimes when you're in the work, it's hard to talk about the work. So it's been interesting how we've been able to shift at least a little bit of our time towards that very fulfilling, I think, part about being an arts worker. And there's no shortage of web-based content these days. So, you know, we can, as a staff, like tour a museum that's in another country. We can, you know, watch videos that are being produced pretty quickly. So it's been, I think we will carry some of those kind of activities into our, you know, when we are in-person meeting. So I think that's going to be kind of a silver lining on the adaptation piece for our staff.
Me and my team, we've been following along with the Fire in Little Africa podcast now. The Bob Dylan and Woody Guthrie Center have been supporting that.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's been so cool. We've been listening along and listening to the music and listening to the podcast and just the history of hip hop here in Tulsa, and these guys have been doing it here for a long time, largely without you know, a ton of press coverage or anything like that. So seeing them kind of get their time to shine has been really cool.
Yeah, no, it has been. There have been these little jewels, I think, within a time where I think our overall community is hyper aware of what. You know, how serious it is to, you know, prioritize our health. And and many of our fellows and staff members have families that are here with them. So you're not just thinking about yourself, you're thinking about the people around you or the people who are your neighbors. You know, if you are a single person, there's maybe another single person down the hall. So there's been this very kind of taking care of your neighbors kind of philosophy that I think was always there, but there's been kind of fuel pumped into that space, and it's been a beautiful thing hearing about how people are taking care.
I want to ask you kind of a question more about more specific to your profession, your sort of sector of the professional world. What, if anything, are you hearing from other artist residencies around the country or you know, around the world? How are they doing with the pandemic? Like how are they handling, you know, whether it's you know, taking care of their artists, you know, protecting them, securing their spaces, or, you know, encouraging them to continue to work and create and, you know, kind of a new environment? Like what are you hearing in the art world right now about artist residencies?
Well, one of the things that happened pretty quickly when people were going into physical distancing mode was that the Alliance of Artist Communities, which is the kind of large professional entity that holds artist residencies together, they mobilized quickly and with such grace and respect for the work that they've done and how they've been able to support people who are becoming very critically impacted, and some of them paralyzed and crippled in their programming. We are currently engaging with that community through a few different formats. I'm participating in these executive director check-ins, where there's about 50 at a time artist residency directors talking about where they are in their phasing. Currently, only 5% of the artist residencies in the country, and there's well over 1,000 of them, are operating. Most of them had to close their doors because they didn't have the capacity to have artists sheltering in place in their community. And that's mostly because most artist residencies are a few weeks to a few months. Tulsa Artist Fellowship is unique in the sense that we are quite durational. So we have artists that are with us for many years, initially a 2-year period, and then we have these arts integration extension awards where people do socially engaged projects. So yeah, we had some different challenges to solve, like what do you do when you have a whole community who are receiving income and housing and currently are adapting their home-based workspaces, and then how do you give them the space to work or not work, whereas those weren't the challenges of many of our peer organizations. Many of them, it was how do you safely get artists back to their home bases. So I've experienced a lot of storytelling within that space, and the 5% of the programs who are operating have been leaning on each other quite heavily for best practices at this time, because this is such an unusual and extraordinary moment for makers. So yeah, it's been, we are very honored to be part of the programming, although we have had to adapt. We are still operating, and that our artists will hopefully soon be able to go back into their studios safely. And that is not the case for many artist residencies that have indefinitely postponed programming, wondering when it will be safe. We do have incoming fellows who will be joining us this year and the beginning of next year, and we are waiting for I think the moment to decide, do we need to make any sort of adaptation about what entry is going to look like for newcomers to our community from other cities. Safety is our highest priority right now as a program, which isn't something that you're necessarily thinking about when you're running an artist residency. I mean, of course, you want people to be safe in their studios and in the shared art making spaces and emotional safety, but to think about health safety through this lens has been something that we are not doing alone, and it's great to have a few peers so that we are in dialogue and kind of navigating that space together.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's quite a lot of uncertainty, organizations like yours that maybe haven't had to think about keeping people apart from one another in the past. Suddenly that's something that you have to account for in every piece of programming that you do. It's a huge ask, a huge adjustment that every sector of our society is dealing with right now. It's
right.
From folks that I've talked to, everybody seems to kind of get it and understand, and they get the folks who host programming or maybe run large organizations like yours. They understand that suddenly it's facing totally unprecedented changes that you've unprecedented. You've never seen them before. I want to know, what are some things that folks in the general public can do with the economy kind of hitting a standstill like it has? What are things that we can do to help support artists whose livelihoods maybe have been affected? Not necessarily the fellows in the artist program that you manage, but artists in general, people in our community who depend on hand making products for a living, or or whose work is maybe just dried up in the last 2 months?
Well, I mean, I think if there's one thing that everyone has in common who has turned towards the internet, we are seeking out things to help us navigate our feelings, um, uh, content to hopefully give us hope. We've been watching films, we've been reading, we've been going to, web-based exhibitions. I mean, it's been listening to tons of music. There's been this amazing, I think, look towards the arts. And I think the way that we can, in a meaningful and sustainable way, hopefully support those community members are visiting their websites, buying work. I mean, if it is within your capacity of your income right now, enough people who are purchasing a book directly from an artist or through a bookseller that is working with distributors that are very artist supportive. Going to your so many like local galleries I know are doing fundraisers for artists, which has been phenomenal. We've seen local business owners who have handmade practices fundraising for other artists. So buying that copper bracelet from Dylan Rose, or going on to M.A. Duran's website and looking at a new print edition, or going on to Flash Flood. I mean, it's incredible how I think local businesses have been looking towards like how much support goes directly to maintaining their staff and their business, but how much can also support artists. I mean, obviously the fellowship, we're supporting artists through our stipends that they receive their fellowship award and their home-based space, but our artists also have studio assistant hours. So they've been doing incredible things for engaging other makers through their practice. We've been funding these virtual projects here in the fellowship and including additional hours to make sure that you can engage with other makers. But I think it's being aware that all the content we're taking in the world is most of it is being made by artists, and so looking for platforms that I think are treating artists really great. I mean, I've seen all sorts of amazing fundraisers from, I mean, SoundCloud has been doing days where like 100% of the sales are going to artists. So looking online for those opportunities is really, I think, quite critical. Yeah, it's a great time, I think, to make, if you've never bought art before, or you've never bought a book or a print edition directly from an artist, go to their website. I mean, we have some great databases here through the state that if you want to really be looking at Oklahoma, everyone from OVAC to other institutions have some some really great databases of artists here. So support your artists through that capacity. People who are local business owners and are looking for ways to adapt to having web-based content. I mean, artists have so many transferable skills within that medium that, if you want to get really creative about how your social media is presented, like hire on an artist. They're gonna do something completely different and bring a whole new audience to your business practice. The idea that you're still going to bring artists into your community is pretty awesome.
I'll ask you two more questions. And for one, more into the personal side of things. I need parenting advice. I will take any new parenting advice as possible. My wife and I are expecting twins this summer, so anything that you could say as a new parent to help us out would be totally appreciated right now.
Well, for me is I have an almost 8-month-old, and
it's very, very darling, almost 8-month-year-old.
I have to say there is an amazing kind of blossoming moment between 6 and 8 months that it's that there's the don't know, you're engaging with each other on a different level. They're not just kind of a sweet, sleeping, very dependent on the basic needs kind of human, but they're, you know, they start to play. And but I would say my advice would be, and I think it's a skill that I have been fortunate to foster over the years of working in the creative industry, is be okay with improvisation. Structure is not something that you can rely on. So let go of those, you know, those parts, I think, of yourself, if they are, you know, some people really need a plan. There's no plan. So let go of the plan, and enjoy all those moments that, although they're hard, soak them up. It goes fast. It does. It goes really fast.
I believe that.
It's amazing, and you will be able to accomplish things that you never thought you could in the multitasking and being able to prioritize things. And that has been a really difficult part about this time for myself and many other working parents, is just how do you fulfill your job responsibilities and also be either, you know, a caregiver or a teacher or both. It has been very interesting to see this happen, but also to be close with your loved ones is really important at this moment. So we get to see things that we wouldn't see with her, you know, in daycare.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
that.
no, of course.
We're quite excited. So
I know. Congratulations, it's awesome.
Thank you. I'll end with one last question. We're kind of asking of everybody we talked to for the series, which is straight on one thing. What about Tulsa do you miss most right now?
Oh, I mean, for me, it's been the small day-to-day interactions. I mean, I know I miss the fanfare moments, the events. I mean, sure. I think I am getting to flex that a little bit online. But it's the, like, going and getting your morning cup of coffee and your conversation with, you know, the amazing women who work at Antoinette's. It's the, you know, getting to, you know, I pick up my lunch and I pop my head in the businesses within the arts district and say hello. And, you know, those little short conversations you have with people that, you know, may not be in your inner circle, those I'm realizing more and more are such a critical part of my life. The community that you have around you in all different capacities, not just talking to your partners or your best friends or your, you know, your family members, but all the people that, you know, I mean, I get excited when the mail comes and I can wave and say hello to my postal worker right now. And I'm glad for that moment because it hasn't been lost. So I look forward to that kind of chorus of people coming back into my life, because I think those are parts of the things that make one's life very rich, and things that make Tulsa really special. Or you build those relationships with people here. People here, they welcome that those interactions. Someone who's coming from you know, other cities, it's one of the things that makes Tulsa very special.
Well, we'll leave it at that. Totally agree with you on that one. I miss kind of savoring those little exchanges, the little moments in the day-to-day. Carolyn Sickles, Executive Director of the Tulsa Artist Fellowship, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Matt.